far as your nephew goes?
I'm listening.
Stay out of his life.
The Many Saints of Newark, it was probably my most anticipated movie of 2021. As The Sopranos is one of the absolute best TV shows to be ever created. So, of course, I was naturally excited for The Many Saints of Newark. And now that I have seen it, here is my review. First, in terms of what I liked about the movie, I think the majority of the performances are excellent. Alessandro Nivola, I think that is his name, is brilliant as Dicky Moltisanti, and I think Dicky Moltisanti himself was a great pick for a lead of this movie. And there's a lot to this character that I found very interesting, and an overall tragic sense that is especially portrayed really well by Alessandro Nivola. Michael Gandolfini kills it as a younger Tony Soprano. He excellently plays a younger Tony Soprano that you can tell still has some like innocence left in, like he hasn't fully been absorbed by the world of like the mob and the mafia just quite yet. Not only are his mannerisms exactly like James Gandolfini, but on a standalone, it is a great performance as well. And I think when the film briefly, more on the briefly later, but touches on the sense that Tony Soprano could have been someone else outside of that mob life, I think that was somewhat interesting to explore, and it gives an overall tragic sense and layer to Tony Soprano's character when you do rewatch The Sopranos. Vera Farmiga was great as Olivia Soprano. There's one scene where she's given kind of like she's given humanity, and it was actually one of the most emotional scenes in the movie, and I wasn't expecting that from a character of like Olivia Soprano. So if you've seen from The Sopranos, is an absolutely despicable human being or character. And I think there are some great moments in the movie. For example, no spoilers, but there's a moment, I think in the first act, that my jaw was dropped. I was like, oh, that did not just happen. And there are some great moments in this movie, like some great mob violence and stuff. But I think overall, The Many Saints of Newark is a bit of a mixed bag for me. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think overall it's an okay movie. You can watch the movie and enjoy it, but it's not like, in my opinion anyways, it's not like a great movie, and it does have some really major issues. I think the first is the runtime. This movie is way too short and is way too bloated for its own good. There is so much going on that just feels crammed in such a short amount of time. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a director's cut for this movie, kind of like, you know, like Kingdom of Heaven or Batman vs Superman, where those movies had a director's cut that infinitely changed the movies, that made it miles better. And I think that could definitely benefit Many Saints of Newark because it has so many storylines. It has, you know, Dickie's main storyline, Johnny Boy and Uncle Junior, Tony's rise to the mafia and the whole race war community and stuff like that. And quite a bit more. There's so much, and how they all connect and link and stuff, that the movie feels very choppy and messy and rushed at many points, especially the final third. I thought the final act of the movie was so rushed that any of the like big emotional oomph moments doesn't really carry any emotional weight. Like stuff happens and I was just kind of like, oh, well, that happened, I guess. And then the movie ends like abruptly, you know. I say, even in the context, The Sopranos show had more of an ending than The Many Saints of Newark, and it felt like there was more stories to tell within the movie, but they just cut the movie short. I know David Chase said that there could be sequels to the movie, but it felt like still the movie ended way too abruptly. And back to the topic, when I meant briefly, that is also what I meant, because everything feels just crammed into under 2 hours. A lot of stories and moments just feel chopped together, and they don't get a lot of like moments to breathe, to explore deeply, you know, like for you to care, to be truly invested by it. I was really hard to get invested by into this movie because I just didn't really give me a reason, and it just felt like stuff was happening, and yeah, it felt like there was a lot of missing content in the movie, kind of like major character moments that could be used to explore the characters more, but I felt like they just completely cut it out, and what feels like we have just the cliff notes of the story, not the actual overall like what could have been a great story. It just feels like the cliff notes. John Bernthal as Johnny Boy Soprano, I thought was fine, but he honestly just could have been played by anyone, which is a bit of a disappointment in my opinion, because when you get an actor like John Bernthal, you know, Shane as The Walking Dead, you know, the Punisher, he is a incredible actor. I just felt like they kind of underutilized his acting abilities or what he could have been in the movie. Again, I feel like that's because they just crammed everything into under 2 hours. Also, there's this weird and unnecessary choice of narration that just felt like it was just there just to link it to The Sopranos more. But if you haven't watched The Sopranos, then like just right at the beginning of the movie, you are spoiled one of the biggest moments of the show. For no reason it does this, just to like kind of link it to the point made to The Sopranos. But if you've seen the show, you already knew that already. So it just feels like you're being beat over the head with this point. So the overall narration just felt very unnecessary in my opinion. And also, it doesn't feel like it has the great charm, humor, wit, and surrealness that the show The Sopranos had. The Sopranos had a distinct tone, and it's what made it memorable. And I feel like the movie, Many Saints of Newark, lacks that. Like, this movie, it just doesn't feel very memorable to me. Like, I don't really have any desire to go and rewatch this movie. A lot of the humor, in my opinion, does feel kind of flat, and a lot of the side characters, kind of like Polly and Cyril, just feel kind of like caricatures instead of actual characters. And that's also another issue. I don't really feel like, you know, the world or the crew of the movie feels really like established, you know, like for example, in other, let's say, mob movies or shows, let's say, you kind of feel what the crew is and how they operate and kind of stuff like that. You don't really get that with this movie. They're just kind of there just because. Overall, I don't think Many Saints of Newark is a bad movie. I think it's a fine, decent movie, but just kind of disappointing and underwhelming and lackluster in my opinion. I still think there is a great movie in there somewhere, which is the frustrating bit, because there is greatness in the movie, but I just feel like it was just chopped up, and with so many stories and characters and what could have been that they could have explored, it just felt crammed into under 2 hours, and it just felt really rushed, unfortunately. So overall, I'm going to give The Many Saints of Newark a C+. If you're a fan of The Sopranos, should you watch The Many Saints of Newark? I still say yes. Like, many people I hear are enjoying it. Maybe you will too. This is just my opinion. So, like, yeah. Anyways, that's it. Also, another disappointing thing about the movie is that it never really clarified how many years Phil Liotta did in the can. Like, come on, no one knows at this point, you know? Anyways, that's it.